Greetings, everyone, online in Jamaica and those joining us from the diaspora. This is a big day as we present the People's National Party's wealthy plan to build a wealthy Jamaica. I am Lisa Hanno. Continuously, we are improving the quality of your life for all our citizens, and that is fundamental to who we are as the People's National Party. So today, we'll tell you about the quality living package, the 7 key factors for a wealthy Jamaica, and our plan for the 3 C's: COVID-19, crime, and corruption, and how we will reduce those barriers to a wealthy Jamaica. With us today is Dr. Peter Phillips, the President of the People's National Party and the next Prime Minister of Jamaica, Damian Crawford, Vice President of the PNP and main author of the Wealthy Plan, Mr. Mark Golding, MP for South St. Andrew, investment banker, and the PNP spokesman on finance. And joining us later is Imani Duncan Price, candidate for Central Kingston. Joining us via Zoom today will be Peter Bunting, candidate for Central Manchester. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Peter Phillips, President of the People's National Party. Dr. Phillips.
Greetings to everyone. This is your day, Jamaica, because this is your plan, the wealthy plan to build a wealthy Jamaica for all its people. The founding principles of the People's National Party will guide our mission of building a modern Jamaica. We will build a wealthy, equitable, and inclusive Jamaica by creating an environment where people enjoy a high standard of living. Continuously improving the quality of life for our citizens will positively impact our productivity, our health, our relationships, and our communities. Amenities such as water, electricity, internet, and transportation are preconditions for building a wealthy society. Today, we will tell you about the quality living package, the 7 key factors for a wealthy Jamaica, and how we will deal with the 3 C's: COVID-19, crime, and corruption, because these are the barriers to the creation of a wealthy Jamaica. The Wealthy Plan is a transformative plan for building Jamaica by building wealth for all Jamaicans. The Wealthy Plan focuses on a few areas, and our ambition is to ensure that it has a big impact. We will elevate our quality of living through internet, energy, and water, and ensure that these are massively expanded. We'll invest in our young people through funding businesses and entrepreneurship. We will fully digitize our educational system and deliver comprehensive health insurance to Jamaicans. We will massively expand housing solutions and farmland ownership and build resilience into our economy through diversification. People have asked me, what is wealthy Jamaica? What does it look like? Well, I say that wealth means advancing the quality of life of our people. When we are wealthy, all Jamaicans will be wealthy and will enjoy a high quality of living. Growing the economy and elevating the standard of living and for all Jamaicans is at the core of who we are as a party. It is our promise to you that we will deliver a country that rises to the level of your own commitment to yourselves and to Jamaica.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for that comprehensive delivery of what we plan to do to make you wealthy. Now I'm going to turn to Damian Crawford, because he's going to explain to us a number of things in the wealth plan, including universal access to health care for all Jamaicans. Damian, let's hear from you.
Yes. Well, definitely one of the foundations of a wealth plan is that there is a minimum basis, a foundation for which takeoff will take place. And so one of the things that the People's National Party considered is what would be an efficient and equitable response to COVID-19. And we thought that the equity, the quality living package was a efficient and equitable response to COVID-19. Let me just explain how did we get to the point of having policy proposals for the People's National Party. We start out with, was it justifiable to do? And we feel that it is justifiable to approach the access to energy and the access to water for a multiplicity of Jamaicans that are going to be impacted negatively. Water in particular because of the hygiene response to COVID and the necessary sanitation that needs to be done. But
so Damian, tell me in 1 minute what it is that we are going to be doing.
In 1 minute, the People's National Party is committing to at least 360,000 households receiving a utility grant of $4,000. $1,000 for water to ensure access through availability, and $3,000 through electricity to ensure access through affordability and availability.
Thank you. Dr. Phillips,
Yes.
I'm sure you are really excited about doing some of these things because I sat in cabinet with you, so did Mark. And Damian was also at the Ministry of Tourism as Minister of State. And we saw you single-handedly pull Jamaica back, having fallen off the precipice at the point of being Greece, and really saving Jamaica's economy and saving the public sector and the economy for all Jamaicans. What Jamaica is reaping now is as a result of the policies you put in place. So you must be excited about coming back again. Tell me, how do you feel?
I am particularly excited about what we will do with land and home ownership, because I believe this is the foundation of the stakeholder society, which is at the heart of all well-run countries. People must feel that they have a stake in the country where they live. I believe that our commitment to providing at least 30,000 titles a year, land titles, is a bankable commitment of the People's National Party. We will be able to do this by not only amending the laws to make it feasible to use a development plan for a community, but also to compel other agencies to accept the basic design of a title and of a community for the treatment of the homeowners or the title holders. And I think also providing the basis for those 700,000 families who, in fact, live in so-called informal settlements is going to be absolutely critical to creating a crime-free, harmonious society where people feel that they can step up in life. Wherever people have titles throughout Jamaica, whether it's Lilliput or Mandela Terrace or Amara Road, you see people who have a title preparing to give themselves improved housing conditions. And in this going on around, we are going to ensure that the NHT also plays its role in providing better access to housing.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips, and I'm going to come back to you. Water is wealth, and universal access to water with connections to every home. We will certainly move from the standpipe to a higher standard of living, and we will focus on potable water, rural water, irrigation water, urban water. And there are 4 major water projects which will impact thousands of homes across Jamaica. 300 water projects in critical areas to create equitable distribution of water. And as Damian said, a $1,000 monthly credit towards every residential water bill. Mark Golding, employment, entrepreneurship, earning is wealth. There's going to be 100,000 jobs in the next 5 years, existing and new industries in technology, agriculture, construction, global outsourcing, etc. You know, there are a lot of Jamaicans who feel that, boy, this can't get funded, you know. The PMP just have a little pie in the sky thing going on. How would you answer that? And I don't want you to give too much away because I want people to watch the debate later. But tell us, how is that going to work?
Well, we have, over the past year, through the committee that Damian chairs, been identifying, through consultation with critical stakeholders across the society, what is it that people really like to see their government do. And we have designed a series of measures that identify and address those issues. So, for example, the land titling project, we've done some serious research on how best to achieve that legislatively and administratively, and we have costed it out at $6.5 billion over 5 years. Similarly, we recognize a need to enhance the housing stock, especially for those who are living in the less congenial atmosphere of housing that's old and dilapidated, and there's a lot of that in Jamaica. So we've identified a $400,000 grant, for example, which we anticipate 10,000 homes would benefit from per annum, doing that through the National Housing Trust. So in terms of the costing of the plan, we've looked at it and said, look, when you look at the makeup of a budget, there are certain aspects of the budget that are non-discretionary, wages and salaries and debt service in particular. Then you have what is left for policies and programs, and those reflect the priorities of a given government. We have looked at the discretionary portion of the current budget, roughly $280 billion, and said, look, roughly a third, a little under a third of that, we would reconfigure for our priorities to be implemented. And we've costed our programs and they fall within that envelope. Now, we are fully mindful of the fact that we are now in an economic crisis. And indeed, up to yesterday, the Bank of Jamaica announced that their projections for the GDP growth, for the size of the economy for this fiscal year is worsening from roughly 6% of GDP contraction, which is what they had originally projected, I think, back in March, now for 7 to 10%. So one has to be realistic, and in phasing this, we will be mindful of what can be achieved in the current realities and what will have to wait for the economy to respond to those measures. But we want to stimulate the economy out of this recession. We're in a deep recession. So some of the proposals that we have will have a stimulative effect on the economy. For example, giving support to persons who were struggling now with light bills and water bills. That will give them greater disposable income. These are people who consume most of what they have in terms of financial resources. So that will stimulate the economy and generate more tax revenue as well as they spend.
All right, before you continue, I want to ask you something specific, because there are probably some Jamaicans listening out there that think, well, you know, the PMP does have got tax we for try to raise this money. What would your answer be to them before I come back to Damien?
We have no intention of levying any new taxes in order to fund our program. In a situation where the economy is in a deep recession, what you need is policies that will be counter-cyclical. What does counter-cyclical mean? In other words, reverse the downward trend that the economy has. You need to stimulate the economy as much as you can within your fiscal resources. You don't do that by taxing people more. What we plan to do is to reorient the discretionary portion of the budget to achieve the things that we feel are the priorities that put the people at the center of development. Social investment rather than social control, for example. That's one of our mantras.
Thank you. Damien, you've been at the center of the development with your committee for this wealth plan. And I know there are a couple of things in there that mean something to you. Why don't you explain what wealthy stands for? And I want you to particularly zone in on the home ownership and certainly the universal access to health and youth.
Yes. Well, the acronym W stands for water, and the People's National Party intend to have water as a core infrastructure investment for the redevelopment of the economy, but also for the COVID fight because of the sanitation and the hygiene portion of the COVID fight. The E is standing for earning opportunities, and we made sure to say earning because employment is one area of earning, but entrepreneurship. We're going to be focusing on having 30,000 entrepreneurs over the next 5 years, and we have put a full entrepreneurial ecosystem into place so as to encourage 30,000 entrepreneurs over the next 5 years. We also are looking at access to healthcare, access to to the internet, which is not technology in itself. Internet is communication technology, but there's other forms of technology, but also access to education. And so what we are looking at in particular as it relates to access to healthcare is a universal health insurance. And this has been bandied about for many years in research, etc. We met with some insurance companies. We also met with some actuaries that have given us an estimated cost per household of an individual with their dependents. And we said that we will aim for at least 60% of the society to be under the initial package.
And that's doable because the PMP actually introduced JADEP and drugs for the elderly program.
But what you find with the current free healthcare as it is organized is that there are many aspects that is not free. So therefore diagnostic services become a hindrance to many persons. And you as an MP, all of you here as MPs, we have experience where a person has been diagnosed but can't get the medicine. And that what sensitive to be diagnosed but then still can't
or
find the
die
cure.
before they get the kidney dialysis.
Before they get the dialysis. So therefore, these are necessary things to do to transform a society, which the PMP has done before. As it relates to youth, that must be a central part of any wealth proposition, because they are the ones to reap and they're the ones to drive with the energy, the zeal, and the understanding that the system as exists can be changed because they have not been battered sufficiently to accept. And so we are proposing, for example, the 1 degree per household, which Prime Minister Phillips have long been proposing for the last 4 years, that we will transform our society by making sure each household have 1 degree to change the shop into a wholesale, to change the hustle into a business, to be the engine of growth for that family. But we have also identified some grants and some lending arrangements for young people to become their own business owners and eventually to mushroom into becoming
There's something
the
that's
new
very
leaders of our
special.
society.
There's something that's very special in the Wealthy Plan because it covers all sectors as well. And it's the ability to rent to buy a home.
Yes.
So I'll come back to you on that. But first I want to jump to Peter Bunting, who is joining us via Zoom. Peter, are you there?
Hi, Lisa.
Hi.
Thank you.
You look good, man.
Thanks.
Tell us about certainly the education portion. And I just want you to speak to us for a minute or two in terms of what you believe this Wealthy Plan will be able to achieve for all Jamaicans in terms of wealth. And you can touch a little bit on healthcare if you'd like.
Well, the PNP has historically been about reducing inequality in Jamaica. And this plan very aggressively addresses creating a basic package of social services for all Jamaicans. Central to the long-term reduction of inequality is access to quality education for all our children. This has been the sort of digital divide has now put our rural children, those who come from families with lower socioeconomic status, at an even greater disadvantage than they have been historically. The only way to address it in the time of COVID and beyond is a dramatic improvement in access to technology, expanding the infrastructure, especially to rural Jamaica, and to make it affordable for everyone. That is not going to happen by relying purely on commercial market forces. The government must come in with a very deliberate program, as Michael Manley did in the 70s to expand electrification to rural communities. We will have to do the same for high-speed internet access. It's one thing to provide tablets and laptops, but if we're to complete that, we need high-speed internet access for real participation. So we look at technology as being a powerful enabler for education, for remote teaching and learning, but also to enable people to work from home. And that again will be a powerful stimulus for rural development, where people who, for example, work in the BPO sector won't have to come into Mandeville to get strong internet access, but can access it from Belfield, from Davidton, from Brokenhurst, etc. These are central issues to essentially providing a social safety net and providing a platform for our children to be able to access quality education regardless of where they are.
And on two things. We all know that many teachers during this COVID period had to dip into their pockets and provide credit to some parents for internet access and data. And they had to be on the road doing a number of things from their personal resources. You want to talk to the public a little bit about the $100,000 grants as a part of the COVID relief for teachers?
Absolutely. The truth of the matter is we very suddenly tried to adapt to remote teaching. And many teachers had not been specifically trained, nor did they have the technology infrastructure. Many of them were attempting to use a smartphone as their platform. Truth of the matter is, with the 100,000 grant that we have put in this program, a teacher will be able to set up a virtual classroom at home, a small studio, proper lighting, support technology, similar to what we're using here for this teleconference, to be able to give a quality experience to the students who she's teaching remotely, and to have a proper interactive environment. That is why we have identified 100,000 to do whatever modifications at home, to put a green screen as the one I'm sitting in front of at my home in Mandeville now, but yet viewers looking on may think I'm in a studio. We want a similar experience for our children who have to resort to remote learning.
Thank you, Peter. Is there anything else you wanted to add to certainly those parents who are on PATH? Because I also know in the Wealthy Plan that those PATH beneficiaries have not been left out.
Well, PATH is a good idea, but over time, the purchasing power of the PATH grant has been reduced by inflation. So we're looking at a one-time 50% increase to PATH households. Ideally, it should be probably 100%, but we recognize that the budget is going to be under stress. But if we're to talk about a basic safety net, we have to deal with access, but we also have to deal with things like nutrition. Well, the schools provided a base for providing at least one healthy meal to our children every day. If they're going to be remote learning, we have to strengthen the families so that they can provide these facilities at home. And at a minimum, we see a 50% increase in PATH benefits to empower families to provide better nutrition for all our children.
Okay, two final things before I jump back to Dr. Phillips. The transportation policy that we have in the Wealthy Plan, and also the access to energy. Because we're modifying even the way we look at transportation, because getting to school is important, and especially in rural areas, a lot of families actually can't afford the transportation costs for getting their students to school, their children to school.
For various reasons. COVID is just one of them, but I think in terms of encouraging our essential workers, many of whom have to go to heroic lengths to continue delivering service to our population. We believe that the motor vehicle policy that is enjoyed, or the motor vehicle concessions that are enjoyed by a relatively small group of the society, now public sector workers, etc. We believe that instead of it only being available for traveling officers or senior staff members, we believe all police officers, certainly all teachers, all soldiers, all nurses, at a minimum, should be able to enjoy these concessionary terms in terms of customs and duties.
And a lot of parents will need connections to electricity if we are going to be in this new phase. And the Wealthy Plan also accelerates that kind of social transformation by giving a grant to make sure that homes can be powered. You want to touch on that finally?
Well, there's still, unfortunately, many homes who are struggling. They have either informal connections or they just cannot afford the electricity bill. We can't, if we're talking on the one hand about universal access to high-speed internet, part of that, the foundation for that, will be having that universal access to electricity. So that's why the plan anticipates providing grants for electrical connections, formal connections to the electricity grid. That is, of course, complemented by the $3,000 credit towards a residential electricity bill that Damien identified earlier.
Thank you, Peter. Dr. Phillips.
Yes, ma'am.
You have had extensive experience in certainly running this country. I mean, health, transportation, under you the JUTC came, revitalization of many, many hospitals and community health clinics. I mean, your record is indisputable and transformative. And I know one of the things that you are very, very clear about achieving in this administration is making sure that Jamaicans own Jamaica. It's about Jamaica and Jamaicans first, and land ownership is critical to you. Tell Jamaica what you see and how we will achieve that.
Well, first of all, I think it's so essential in correcting a historical injustice that the people who for centuries suffered and struggled and in order to produce on the land but were given no compensation after their enslavement. It is a correction of this historical injustice that the people who are the descendants of those who were turned loose from the plantations should now have a chance. Mm-hmm. Modern technologies make it possible. Rather than having to rely, as we had to in the past, in a single surveyor with his survey instruments out there plotting the land, we can now rely on satellite-based technologies to be able to give you a GPS positioning that can map out a lot of areas of land, which will have the effect of reducing the cost of producing titles. And so we think we'll be able to not only make the titles affordable, but that we will be able to do so in greater numbers for all the people, and that we want to be able to be assured that we will be able to overcome this problem of ownership or of lack of access to ownership within a decade. Certainly in 5 years, you must make an impact on it. And we believe we can do 30,000 a year and to be able to deal with that.
I'm going to jump in a little bit and play the advocate here, because all of us here have sat in government and we know what it takes to get government to move and to disrupt the bureaucracy. Yes. You've got the seatbelt policy in place. You've got JUTC. You dealt with crime as Minister of National Security and locked up some of our biggest criminals. People are listening to you and saying, well, me up on the land long time. And how do we say to people, what is that thing that you will shift as Prime Minister to make sure that this happens?
The key thing is legislation that compels other agencies to accept the titles produced with the new techniques, with the new technologies. Mm-hmm. If you can change the rules and all of that, but if the people, the bank or the survey office doesn't accept it, then it's of no assistance to you. So that's the first key thing, changing the legislation. And the second key thing is really putting a team in place. This is what we did even with the IMF programs. We had to say, look, other areas are running their regular systems in government, but if we want to accomplish what we need to accomplish, we have to set up one office that is going to ensure that all the things that we need to do are done. And this is what we're going to do with land titling. We're going to give it a special energy with some well-qualified officials who have already done the research to make certain that we can solve this problem. I think why Jamaican people are so cynical about things is because they've heard plans so many times and not seen it happen. we have to make certain that we make these things happen. And you have to make it happen to catch the mind and the imagination within the first 6 months, 12 months
Absolutely.
of what you're doing.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. The People's National Party is a wonderful organization. Why? Because we have a blend of youth, experience, and gender balance, because we have some fantastic women who are running for candidates across the length and breadth of this country who are bright, energetic, and assertive and innovative. Imani Duncan Price is one such young woman who is running in central Kingston to become the Member of Parliament. And there are a couple of things that are important to her as she goes forward. Technology and building a fully digital Jamaica with universal access to internet across Jamaica, which means investment in both broadband and satellite technology. This means that persons who right now would like to access the internet and pay or just have service will have the ability to do so with free Wi-Fi hotspot zones across communities in Jamaica. That will mean that we'll be able to invest in building out connections at points, at social gatherings, community centers, churches, parks, city centers, all towards creating a connected and productive Jamaica. So I'm going to turn to her now for her to tell you in her own energetic and spirited style how that is going to happen. Imani, welcome.
Thanks, Lisa. You know, technology is wealth, and everything that has been said so far between Peter, yourself, Mark, Damien, a fundamental underpinning is technology in moving Jamaica forward, and I think enabling Jamaicans all across the country to access opportunity and to make it, to realize their potential. We are a God-blessed country with so much talent, and so having looked at the budget, having looked at the actual economy between Peter and Mark, they have found funding to support proper investment in technology. No more just talk, right? But consistent funding, because it's the way forward now. And so, as you indicated, universal access to technology, to the internet. That requires both investment in broadband as well as satellite technology as well. And having spoken with different providers, different companies as to what is required, it is doable, it will cost, but it's imperative that every Jamaican, whether you're up in the hills in Kellits or you're in central Kingston, have access to be able to pay for the service as possible. We know as well as the PNP that not every Jamaican can afford access in this way, to pay for it. And so there are 600 communities across Jamaica, all across Jamaica, we've identified that in establishing free Wi-Fi there. As it stands, Peter Bunting, as he spoke about the education, we know that majority of our families in Jamaica, 48% of them are single mother households, right? And they are poorer. They can't always afford to pay for internet access for the children's online learning. And so we're very focused on having the free Wi-Fi up and running, not just a 5-year, 10-year plan, but up and running within that first year, so that the children can have access, the mothers have a bit of stress being relieved from them, and the children can perform well.
Let me, one of the things that I know that's really important to you, because you've done work with it before, because internet also gives you the ability to geographically reach into other spaces to create wealth. Globally. So if we do put the internet access at community centers, it actually exponentially increases the opportunities for young people. So speak to that.
So imagine now you have young children, let's say from ages 5 to 16, working homework centers with those particular community centers. And then after 5 o'clock, young persons who are 18 to 30, 40 years old, who are ambitious or bright, can engage in what we call crowdsourcing, accessing job opportunities on the internet and working for companies abroad, but having the ability, the computers there, the access there, using their own tablets as well to provide a service globally and be paid online accordingly. And so a fundamental part of what we're doing in the PNP is how do you open up the world to people so that we can express ourselves.
And to become more globally competitive. Mm-hmm. And that's what young people need to understand. But I think there's a generation of young people out there that are skeptical. Why? Because they have been fed a diet that somehow the People's National Party has not done anything over the years. And I want to mash down that lie and that myth, because it is a People's National Party that has built seminal social investments in this country. We've done free education, we've done the National Housing Trust, equal pay for equal work, Jamal, Jamaica Lifelong Learning, built the STC, Jamaica Welfare. We went further to do Chase and drugs for the elderly. We have a list of achievements that have really uplifted people's lives. And this access to new technologies is really a build on to when we did rural electrification to give all rural communities access. So Imani, I know another thing that you're really passionate about is helping women in this country. And we have a plan as well to make sure that single mothers also have access to mortgages, and that in and of itself gives women financial stability to move out of circumstances that could be abusive or that they've been experiencing.
And makes them vulnerable.
So go ahead.
No, it's absolutely important because, and this is how we, as the People's National Party, as you said, historically, looking at people and their challenges and creating practical solutions to address those problems. Now, the fact of the matter is that most women, unfortunately, even though we have so many trained women in this country, they earn less than men. And so when it comes to the actual ability and the financial ability, they're at a disadvantage. And so in crafting the solutions around looking at the mortgage and the benefit to be able to access the
single mortgage.
The single mortgage.
Single income mortgage.
Single income mortgage. So you can actually buy your own home on your own. Because most times you have to couple with a parent, couple with your husband or something. But if half the country is single, half of the households are single, how do they actually access decent housing for their children? So we've crafted a particular solution geared towards single parents. So fathers can benefit too, because there are some single fathers who are very responsible. But in this case, we know the majority are women and can, in fact, go to NHT, access the benefit itself, and establish a proper home for their children.
Okay, but hold on 1 second on that, because I'm going to jump to Mark now. There are two things coming out of COVID that we're going to do to make sure that persons have some peace of mind and are able to exhale. That rent-to-own scheme, because housing is wealth, and also the legislation to be able to make sure that persons are not in penalty for defaulting on their mortgage after 90 days.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, I mean, we're mindful that during this dreadful pandemic, the Jamaican economy is really being battered. And as I've said, the Bank of Jamaica yesterday announced that they are projecting 7 to 10% contraction this fiscal year in the size of the economy. That's a very substantial contraction. I think it's unprecedented in our history to have a contraction of that size. So we need to identify policies that can be rolled out that will turn the ship around and move it in the right direction towards growth and employment again. Housing, especially affordable housing, is an area that we have identified because it creates a lot of employment opportunities. It creates opportunities for persons to become certified to work in the construction sector, and we will be encouraging that. And it delivers homes and ownership to persons. Now, in the informal economy, it's often difficult to get a mortgage because you can't substantiate your income. You don't have a pay slip. The rent-to-own idea is to allow persons who cannot immediately qualify for a mortgage to rent on the basis that a portion of the rent will go towards a down payment. Once they've achieved the necessary down payment, it converts to a mortgage and they become an owner. And this allows them to build their credit while they're paying the rent so that they can qualify for a mortgage. It's a very innovative idea and we intend to use it. In terms of delivering 130,000 housing units over 5 years, it's definitely a stretch target. We've had meetings with developers locally to see what capacity there is to deliver on that. And it's going to require all hands on deck. It will be, the financing of it will require private and public participation, pension funds, the capital markets, the banking sector, and of course, our catalytic agency conceptualized by Michael Manley, the National Housing Trust.
Bap. I'm coming back to you, Imani, but you didn't answer the question.
On the other
90
one
days.
now, we recognize, thank you. On the other issue you raised, the reality is that with people being laid off, not only in the tourism sector, though perhaps most badly affected in that sector, 300,000 workers being impacted, but more broadly as well with the contraction of the economy, there will be persons whose homes are in jeopardy because they are unable to service their mortgages. And this is really as a result of an unprecedented shock in the form of the COVID-19 epidemic. What we are saying is that we're going to ensure that regulators don't treat the usual 90-day arrears as being the yardstick for default when it comes to residential mortgages. The government will stand behind the interest accrual, so the lenders will know that that interest for a period of up to 2 years is guaranteed by the state, allow the economy to recover so persons don't lose their homes. It also protects the housing market from a mass of houses being dumped because lenders are compelled to sell. So we think this is very important as a response to COVID.
Thank you, Mark. Imani.
Just on the point that Mark made about the rent to own and the value of that in particular to persons in the informal sector, it's huge. I mean, you think about communities in South St. Andrew and Central Kingston, in rural Jamaica, where persons are not earning a formal job. There's a chance for them to actually own their own home in a practical way and just feel that pride. And when I see many women across my own constituency, who are working very hard, very, very hard, I know that that particular solution will suit them very well in establishing a base for their families. But on that last point that Mark made as well, in terms of the investing in a productive way to get the economy turned back around, the last point on technology, Lisa, I want to speak to is about our investments in technology parks. Because you don't only want to just have community centers being enabled to facilitate individual entrepreneurship at the micro level,
right,
or the children coming out of primary schools being supported, but you also want to boost innovation across the economy. We are going to grow ourselves out of this crisis, not contract and pull back, but support people in terms of their health, but also boost the economy in the right ways.
Because we're the People's National Party.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Now, the wealth plan, and certainly our People's Pledge, puts people at the center of Jamaica's development because we are the People's National Party. We've always been that party that has been interested in the matters of people because we care. And what Imani, Mark, and Dr. Phillips and Damon have been speaking about is a concept of making sure that we stimulate ourselves out of this crisis. So when you heard about that rent-to-own scheme in terms of buying homes, etc., that will be targeted at those persons and across sectors that have modest wages. The taximan, the nurse, the young person under 35. And we've reserved 5,000 homes for each sector, persons with disabilities. So each year we'll be spending $750 million out of the discretionary spending to make sure that that cohort is taken care of and that the society is built with them in mind. Youth is also wealth, because we will establish $4 billion worth of an investment fund for youth first job initiatives. And we guarantee each tertiary graduate a paid internship in private and public sector companies. Youth entrepreneurship means a lot to the PNP, and we will invest in our youth with the ambition of creating 30,000 entrepreneurs. Our intention is to move business from startup to expansion. And I'm going to go back to Mark Golding. Tonight is his debate, so I want you all to tune in, because he's going to be saying some very special things. I don't want him to be giving away everything in here, but there are some removals to the barriers of wealth. And I know his competence because I used to sit on the LegCom Committee of Cabinet, and you said, brother, over, so he can churn out legislation historically. And a lot of what Jamaica is achieving now is because of the historic performances of Mark Golding when he was a Minister of Justice in the last administration. Mark, to achieve the plan of a wealthy Jamaica, we must have overcome some barriers. Crime, COVID-19, and corruption. And crime is a relentless one. Speak to us a little bit about what we're going to do to make sure that we're not having a socially controlled state, but how we're going to socially invest in making sure we reduce crime.
Yeah. Well, crime is a symptom of problems in the home and in communities. And we believe that the way to manage crime in Jamaica, which is a long-standing and perhaps the most serious problem that the country faces, is not through focusing on repressive measures of social control, states of emergency that allow persons to be arrested without charge and detained indefinitely, and so on, or ZOSOs, which have been useful in dealing with hotspots, but which are really not a long-term solution. Rather, social investment is where we need to focus. And we have, in the last PNP administration, we treated crime and violence as a public health issue and took a public health approach to solving the problem. And we got significantly positive results. The average number of murders per year when we were in office was significantly less than applies either before or since that term, our term of office. Programs like Unite for Change, which really look at trying to engage young people, especially those who are vulnerable in their communities because they're not in a job, they haven't been certified or trained and so on, and trying to get them on board to reorient their life through mentorship and through training. We need a substantial investment in that type of human development. So essentially, obviously the ideas of making the force as efficient as possible, expanding the police force. Currently, the police force is undermanned, ensuring that the vehicles that they have are in working order, and making serving as a police officer something attractive by, for example, making motor vehicle access more affordable for them.
And home ownership.
Home ownership more affordable for them, and increasing the insurance cover that they have, especially if they're killed in the line of duty, and all those things that really make the society reflect well in terms of how they regard the persons who stand between us and violent crime. That is part of the policy, but it's really a more people-centered approach.
And I also, before I touch on the other two, I also know that we will be having a serious injection in terms of a stimulation package for young people who are at risk to steer them away from crime, and also rehabilitation mechanisms for those persons who have come out of jail perhaps so that they don't re-enter the system. Take me now to COVID-19 and what you believe is the best thing out of this wealth plan to take us out of this fog.
It's a collection of measures. It's not one particular thing. I think the focusing on affordable housing to stimulate the economy and to provide ownership is very critical. The land reform and titling reform ties in with that. The grants to allow persons who are living in dilapidated housing conditions to self-improve their own housing stock, tied with the titling program that we'll have. This will enable their quality of life to increase significantly and the wealth of their family also to increase. We have programs for empowering entrepreneurs in the MSME sector, the micro, small and medium-sized sector, with grants to enable them to get their businesses going. To sustainability, we have tools for artisans. We have a $50,000 tool for any tool grant for any certified artisan to help them to step up their productivity. All of these things are really looking at how we get the informal sector formalized and how we get the entrepreneurial spirit of our people to be generating wealth for the society as a whole.
And corruption?
Corruption, we conceptualized and implemented MOCA, the Major Organized Crime Agency. That was a PNP initiative. The Integrity Commission with prosecutorial powers was a PNP initiative. We tabled the legislation. The JLP eventually passed it. We need those agencies to be functioning properly. They need to be empowered and encouraged to do their work. They have the necessary legislative powers now. There may be some tweaks that will be necessary, and we will do those. But we want to see accountability in public life, and that is critical to us because we know that corruption, which is essentially thieving, is like a cancer eating away at the state, at the body politic, at the democracy, and at the society that we have. So we take that very seriously. I wanted to say one thing on the disabled community. You touched on it. My father dedicated his life to uplifting disabled people in this country, and I grew up in a household that was focused in that way. I have spent many hours at the Sir John Golding Rehab Center. It was then called Mona Rehab, just seeing how they operate, and since his passing, I've tried my best to keep it going. The Disabilities Act what we passed in 2014, was a fundamental piece of legislation for empowering disabled people. Jamaica was the first country to sign on to the Disabilities Convention. Floyd Morris, who was then a junior minister, was critical in pushing that. The disabilities legislation, which was passed, is not yet in effect, and it's a travesty. We intend to bring it into effect, and we intend to support access for the disabled through spending at least $750 million of the capital budget a year to making buildings accessible across Jamaica. We're going to continue that until we have an accessible society.
And sign language, teaching sign language in schools.
That's all part of it, so that people become trilingual, Jamaican, English first, Jamaican, and sign.
Exactly.
Finally, the Human Rights Institute.
Yeah. When I was Minister of Justice, I attended a law ministers conference in Gaborone in Botswana. And I was introduced there to the concept of a national human rights institution that really focuses on ensuring that your human rights performance of your society is at a level that's consistent with civilized norms. The Commonwealth supported the development of the proposals for bringing such an institution here. And the model that we chose, which was the one recommended for small countries like ours, is a hybrid model. And we looked at the public defender, the Office of the Public Defender, to expand the mandate of that office rather than create a new institution with a cost attendant on that. Build out the Office of the Public Defender so it becomes a national human rights institution. We did consultations, we got feedback in the design, and Cabinet approved it. Since this government came into power, they said they were going to do it, but they have done nothing about it. We intend to revive that because we regard human rights as essential. The young people of this country want to know that their rights are protected. They want to know that we are a tolerant society that believes in the essential humanity of the individual and protects those rights. And that institution will be an important institutional foundation to establish and maintain human rights in the country.
Thank you. Let me tell you something. If you're not excited about this wealthy plan, you need to become excited about it because it is going to address your life. I want to take you to this commercial break brought to you by the People's National Party.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Building your Kingston, building Clarendon, building your St. Ann, Portland to Westmoreland, building your St. Bess, building St. Catherine, yes, St. Mary now get left, and over to the west, building up St. James, St. Thomas of the Wave, building Manchester name, Trelawney we are clear. Hey, building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, build it up, build it up, hospital and school farmer plant more food, build it up, more factory like a road that improve, build it up, put the X beside the head, that's what you're gonna do, build it up, we are build Jamaica for me and you.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Building your Kingston, building Clarendon, building your St. Ann, Portland to Westmoreland, building your St. Bess, building St. Catherine, yes, St. Mary now get left, and over to the west, building up St. James, St. Thomas of the Wave, building Manchester name, Trelawney we are clear. Hey, building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, building your Jamaica, PNP does a build it up, hospital and school farmer plant more food, build it up, more factory like a road that improve, build it up, put the X beside the head, that's what you're gonna do, build it up, we are build Jamaica for me and you.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Building Your Jamaica means providing greater access to housing. The PMP's pledge to you is to establish a rent-to-own program with a plan allowing for a portion of your rent to go towards your down payment and eventual ownership of your home. No longer will you be stuck in the quicksand, which prevents you from owning your own home. We are building a Jamaica for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Water is essential for my life and yours. The PMP's pledge to you is to undertake a massive upgrade of current water channels, treatment, storage, and supply networks, creating universal access to water to every home, both in urban and especially rural communities. We will allocate a monthly $1,000 credit towards all your water bills. Water gives us all dignity. We're building a Jamaica for all Jamaica.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Small business represents the backbone of our economy, and many have been devastated by the pandemic. Our pledge is to increase funding for small businesses through grants and low-interest loans. New MSMEs will be offered an income tax break for their first 5 years of operation. Let's build a strong business sector for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Access to quality education is one of the guiding principles of the PNP. Our pledge is to ensure that all students and teachers have access to adequate technology infrastructure. The rapid infusion of technology into the teaching and learning process will ensure that no child gets left behind. Let's build an education system for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's...
Thank you, everyone. I'm now going to take questions from the media to our panel. So, if you have any questions, feel free to go and ask them now. They're coming. We're standing by. Age of technology. So, Dr. Phillips, are you feeling the feeling?
Feeling the feeling.
What about you, Damian?
No, I mean, it is clear that our proposals are the best proposals out there, seeking to be discredited by persons who are campaigning on behalf of the Jamaica Labour Party. And as we make it clearer and clearer, I think that victory is near.
Okay. Mr. Nelson, would you like to ask your question now, sir?
Jordan Nelson here from Loop News. During the last 4 years, the PMP has been adamant that there should be a crime plan. We have not seen a crime plan in this manifesto. Do you have one, and when will it be released?
No, I think it is clear. We agitated for the national consensus, which was eventually signed at the conference center probably about a month ago. And the elements in that constitute what we are prepared to support as a crime plan. Put simply, the immediate task is to have hotspot policing wherever violence erupts. It also means you have to undertake social interventions to be able to bring peace to communities that have been disrupted. At the same time, you have to undertake reform of the security forces, particularly the investigative capacities of the police force, because it has been demonstrated worldwide that the key issue in guaranteeing a peaceful society is your ability to identify those who break the law, bring successful prosecutions, and lock up the people who have broken the law. And so that is going to require serious reform to investigative capacity.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. David?
Yes, if I may just add as well, the manifesto has highlighted clearly, one, that we intend to increase the use of technology so that we will be doing Jamaica Eye on all government buildings, so to increase that use of technology. Two, that we'll be having permanent roving unit within the security forces, where we'll be going up to 3,000 workable vehicles to ensure that that can expand the reach of the police force. We have also said 1,000 trained social workers to go into the community policing activities to ensure that that aspect is buttressed, working with the PMI, working with the churches, and working with the communities to re-energize as well the what was the neighborhood watches. And we have also said that we'll be having lawyers become a part of the police force to ensure that legal ramifications don't kill some of the cases that we're preparing to carry out. So there has been in the manifesto the commitments of the People's National Party in addition to what was in the agreement of how we'd handle crime differently.
Thank you. Edmund Campbell, your question, please.
Right, a few questions. Will a new PNP government return to a borrowing relationship with the IMF, of course, against the background of what we are experiencing, the impact of COVID-19 on the economy? In monetary terms, or, well, simply, what is the sum total of the various initiatives under the wealth program in year 1 and year 2? And how do you plan to fund them, particularly the 360,000 households you speak about, receiving 48,000 per annum for utilities? And finally, what are your plans to balance the budget going forward in light of the worsening economic projections of between 7 and 10% negative growth for the current fiscal year?
I think the point was made, first of all, that we don't believe that you need to tighten the economy in a situation when it is contracting. We have made the sacrifices already through running very tight and balanced budgets. Now we can introduce some slack so that we are able to revive the economy. The truth is, at the present time, no one knows where the bottom of the COVID crisis is. We have no plan to return to a borrowing relationship with the fund. Our plan is, in fact, that we would be able to finance this by being flexible in reducing the primary surplus targets, or put it another way, by being able to run a deficit to a greater degree. And that's the plan as it is now. Right now, nobody knows where the bottom of this crisis is.
But I think what we do know is that as a People's National Party, we have perennially taken Jamaica out of the worst cases of adversity financially that this country has experienced. Imani, you wanted to say something?
Where there are, in fact, finances available, is how you spend it, Lisa, as was said before, in terms of the actual discretionary spending. Do you spend it on overseeing corruption, or do you spend it on education for the people themselves? Do you spend it on technology to advance the country in a particular way, or do you spend it on cars, police cars not yet delivered and funds not found? So we have to be very focused, I think, as a party and our commitment.
Thank you.
But Lisa, the 6-month cost of the JLP's care package was 11.5 billion. The 1-year cost of the PMP's care package, which is the utilities, is 17.5 billion. So therefore, this conversation of impossible is incorrectly placed, because we have identified that less than 30% of what the government has discretion over covers the entire proposals put forward in the wealthy plan.
Can you say that a little bit differently for me, Damien? Because I want you to speak to Vivian in my constituency and Blacker who live in Monique that they can understand it. In other words, say it again. What the GLP did in terms of compassionate
The GLP
grants?
had a compassionate and care package that valued 11.5 billion. To get it, you have to apply, you have to go stand in the sun and expose yourself to COVID. We felt that a more equitable and efficient methodology that considered a wider group of persons, including those not directly employed to the tourism industry, should be considered. And this one will assist 1 million people, 360,000 houses at $4,000 per month, much more than the 10,000 that they have gotten over the last 5 or 6 months.
And stimulate the economy
This
at the
will
same time.
stimulate the economy, give spending to teachers, give spending to police persons, give spending to mini managers. But there have also been layoffs also in the banking sector. Layoffs in 56% of manufacturers have said they have laid off some persons. And so therefore a more equitable, a more democratic, a more expanded care package. But as I'm saying, just mathematically, for the last 5 months, the GLP's care package was 11.5 billion. Our proposal for care is 17.5 with utilities to these households for a year.
Okay. I now have a question from Althea Saunders to me, for Mr. Bunting. How will a PMP administration provide universal internet access when the telecommunications companies have not been able to invest in modernizing networks fast enough to keep up with the growing bandwidth demand of customers? And over what period will this universal coverage be achieved? Peter.
If we're serious about rural development, if we're serious about reducing inequality in the society, we cannot leave it entirely to market forces to provide these services at affordable cost to the currently marginalized. So we have to have a deliberate investment, a deliberate intervention, just as the PNP administration of the 70s subsidize the cost of running poles and wires into rural towns and villages. We will have to do the same thing in the next term to enable high-speed internet access universally. Now, it may not be achieved in year one. It is something that we will progressively build out over the next 4 or 5 years. But this will require a subsidy. Obviously, if we leave it to the two cellular companies or the companies that are providing fiber optic services, it won't reach into deep rural Jamaica. It will not be affordable to many in the inner city communities. So we don't have to apologize when subsidies are given to big companies to encourage production. We applaud it. This is a subsidy for the average Jamaican that will improve their productivity phenomenally over time.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Nelson, Job Nelson, I know you have another question.
All right. The Wealthy Plan speaks about creating 100,000 jobs in 5 years. Can you give me some details on some of the iron opportunities that will come from the blue, green, and orange economy? Also, I haven't seen or heard anything about a minimum wage. What is the plan of the PMP in terms of that regard? What is the minimum wage and how will it be calculated?
We didn't mention. Well, what we have, I said earlier in the manifesto is that 30,000 entrepreneurs are being targeted over the next 5 years, with an average of 2 to 3 persons being employed or jobs provided by those entrepreneurs. That almost immediately covers. We're also looking at building these houses in the low-income homes, 130,000 houses in the low-income bracket. And that, again, with the construction squads that is in the manifesto as well, will be trying to create jobs in that area. Agriculture will be a central focus, and as you have seen in the manifesto, we have also said we'll be putting a marketing unit to ensure that access to CARICOM with more goods and to our diaspora centers will create a greater improvement in agriculture. The leader is very committed as well to the technological parks, innovation parks, and that will be set up to ensure as well that there is some activities there. We're looking at expanding the outsourcing as well to move further than just the call centers, to look at legal process outsourcing and other higher levels of outsourcing. So the People's National Party will also look at a reimagined tourism, and that will be necessary coming out of the COVID reality. That is how we plan to create that 100,000 jobs, not just counting window wipers as is being done for reduced unemployment.
In addition to that, the orange economy, that being the cultural industries, creative industries, in the manifesto it speaks to the noise abatement law being addressed fundamentally to allow for entities to pursue their business while communities can also sleep peacefully. That means also putting in place special entertainment zones, making them a reality. And we also have microfinance support, where there's non-collateral loans for persons in the entertainment industry.
Say that again, Imani.
So right now, for a musician, an artist to get any money to fuel their business, they have to go into a bank, and the banks normally require collateral. These persons don't have collateral, they have the idea, they have the creativity. It's not a tangible thing. Dr. Phillips has been an advocate for this in terms of really and truly being creative in supporting and financing these thousands of Jamaicans. So we have microfinance loans, as stated in our manifesto, that don't require any collateral at all. And in fact, confidence loans.
Confidence loans.
Right, where if you in fact are paying this back now, you're then kind of forgiven on interest. So
you can buy a MacBook Pro, you can buy a Canon camera, you can expand your business. I get it. We have another question on Zoom. I believe it is from Mr. Anderson. Dwayne Anderson.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Dwayne Anderson from TVJ News. Mr.
Welcome.
Crawford, I'm not sure if Mr. Golding left, but wouldn't a better idea be to identify alternative energy solutions that could give the equivalent of the $3,000 savings and possibly even create
We have to do
jobs?
something in a minute.
Well, a government must have short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. You would accept that in the short term, there's a need to assist many persons with a care package. We could have given a care package in the same way, to say 4,000 a month line up in the line, but we thought an efficient method was to ensure that they had access to water to help to fight COVID and access to electricity to make staying at home, whether to work, to do school, or just to avoid the virus, be more comfortable and be more of a reality. So there are other areas within the energy that we seek to, electricity costs that we seek to be committed to. But in the short term, it is necessary for an immediate response, and then there'll be a mid-term and a long-term response, which definitely include solar energy and other
But
renewables.
we were the party that introduced the renewable energy policy through Philip Paulwell. So that is not something that is going to be
Absolutely,
eradicated.
and it's not an either-or alternative. There is a need, and I think we are underestimating the need to provide immediate relief for people. And, you know, it's a point that Peter Bunting made a while ago. We think it's quite all right to give subsidies to big business, but we often think that it is a terrible thing that ordinary people or small entrepreneurs or somebody trying to cut a tune and make it in the world should do something.
So I actually haven't seen that documented.
I think we're getting a feedback from you, Mr. Campbell. Can you put your mic on mute? Thank you. Were you finished?
Yes, I think it's important to recognize that we are providing relief for people who are suffering from the economic collapse. Their families are suffering, often can't feed themselves. We need to offer that relief. And at the same time, we are helping people to become part of the formal economy. That in itself is a big boost to the wealth of the country. And it is something that we believe, in fact, everybody should applaud and support. Then the development of other alternatives for renewable energy are things that will take place and in fact are taking place and which we will continue to support.
Okay, our other question is coming from Facebook, from Venoris Bryce. What are the plans or mechanisms in place to make farming a more influential part of our economy? And what's out there to put more in farming? Because right now, local products are very expensive, or we just can't get it.
Well, again, the land titling, I like to start with that. Because the small farmers, the 60% of them who don't have a title for the land that they are now working, will be able, when they get their titles, to be able to go to the financial institution to get some money to help build out their irrigation system, to help buy the pickup to move the products to market. All of that will be part of the help. The next part of the arrangement is going to be to ensure that RADA and others do the job of providing real support for the production arrangements of these farmers. We also want to ensure that we are able to assist them with marketing and to help market it out. We have an entirely different view of what should be done by JAMPRO and others to not just be facilitating foreign investors coming in, but to facilitate the local investor and to help them with local marketing as well.
Damian.
Well, definitely the water, definitely for their crops, etc., and the investment in that is one general way. As the leader has said, with the marketing into CARICOM, with the marketing into the diaspora spaces to expand that as well. With quality traceability, that is definitely important for health and export. And the People's National Party has said for rural youth in particular who have access to land, we will offer training in areas that have been identified as of high demand and startup capital for them to take use of their land. There's no negative in farming. I can tell you that as a farmer myself.
Well, let me tell you something. When we were developing this plan, the agriculture segment was perhaps the part to me that I was most excited about, because it also addresses some fundamental things that we have not addressed in terms of putting farming forward. So this is one of the industries that we are going to make sure coming out of COVID is at the center of Jamaica's development. It is the largest employer of labor in Jamaica. We have over 200,000 small farmers in Jamaica whose livelihoods have been seriously impacted by COVID. They've been decimated by drought, so the water is going to help in terms of the water projects that we're doing in rural areas. But they've also been decimated by the closure of the tourism industry and schools. So we have to make sure that we give them the stimulus with the seeds, with the fertilizer. And in this program, and Damien, I'm sure, is excited about it too, for farmers, we will take care of the first acre of their farm with fertilizer. There's also an insurance package in there for farmers, which we have taken from Ghana, because what they do is they use geopositioning satellite imagery to see where drought is going to take place and where we have better rainfall. And then what we will actually do is make sure that there is perhaps a 1% levy on fertilizer, and that will go into a pool that will be able to help a farmer in case their field is wiped out. So we're putting farmers at the center of development and providing the storage capacities in terms of public-private sector partnerships so that farmers will always have a reliable market for dry and cold storage and have the value-added mechanism. So if them tomatoes spoil or if them pineapple are spoil, we turn it into ketchup, etc. We have a final question from Mr. Campbell. Mr. Campbell?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hi, Siobhan.
Okay, good afternoon. Siobhan Campbell, Nationwide News. My question is to Dr. Phillips, since he touched on this briefly earlier. As he pointed out, there is a great deal of cynicism and skepticism about this wealth plan put forward by the PNP. What assurances or on what basis should the Jamaican people trust the PNP to put forward this initiative successfully?
Quite simply that we have done it before and we will do it again. One of the things, particularly, let's look at the question of agriculture. In the last PNP administration, we cut about $300 million off the country's food import bill. Since then, under the current administration, that food import bill has climbed up again to its highest levels, in excess of 1.1 or thereabout billion. It shows that we do have the formula for reducing it by creating the environment which builds the linkages between our farmers and the agro-processing industries. We did very well with the farms that we had put on this, and we supported the agro-parks. We are going to do similar things again, and we are going to add to those things. I think the record is what should give you the assurance.
Damien, do you want to add to that, Animani?
Yes. Again, the costing will be made available. I have identified already that the JLP's care package is for half of the year. Is more than half of what our proposal has been. But also the PMP has delivered in infrastructure for the Highway 2000, for the North-South Highway. We have delivered in water. We have delivered in housing. Portmore was built under the People's National Party. So therefore, as the leader says, that there's evidence. History is a good predictor of what will come in the future.
And I think recent history, Lisa, should be an indicator to Jamaicans, old and young, about the capacity of the leadership of the People's National Party to deliver Jamaica through some very serious times. It is going to get worse in this country. Do you want a government led by Peter Phillips, who has led this country through the worst economic challenges that we had just 6 years ago, 8 years ago, that was caused by the previous administration not following through on particular commitments? Peter, yourself, Comrade Leader Porsche at the time, the Prime Minister, Mark Golding, and the Cabinet, the People's National Party led with focus, with heart, and with smarts. And to me, delivered the basis of a growing economy when the current government took over. And what have they done with it, Lisa? You have seen reduction in GDP,
increase in murders.
Increase in murders. And this is very clear. Before COVID, GDP was what? 0.1%. And it was reducing from 0.4%. That's not 5 and 4. Look at the performance of the actual leadership, the actions taken, tough decisions made with heart, and decide for yourself which government, which party can lead Jamaica through this particular crisis and take us through successfully, because we will rise again as a country.
I couldn't have said it any better. So Jamaica, if you really, really want a party that has youth and experience and a team that is competent and visionary, then this is the party that you need to vote for. This is our promise. This is what we will deliver. A Jamaica that works for everyone, a Jamaica that lifts everyone, and a Jamaica where wealthy is something real, not seasonal, not a passing dream. Let us build your Jamaica. That's what the wealthy plan is for you, and we will build a wealthy Jamaica together with this team led by Peter Phillips, not a one-man band, but a team of competent, innovative, energetic Jamaicans who people matter to their lives, and it's in our DNA. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on September 3rd. Put your X beside the head and make sure you look at www.votepnp2020.com. Thank you.
The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Building Your Jamaica means providing greater access to housing. The PNP's pledge to you is to establish a rent-to-own program with a plan allowing for a portion of your rent to go towards your down payment and eventual ownership of your home. No longer will you be stuck in the quicksand, which prevents you from owning your own home. We are building a Jamaica for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Water is essential for my life and yours. The PNP's pledge to you is to undertake a massive upgrade of current water channels, treatment, storage, and supply networks, creating universal access to water to every home, both in urban and especially rural communities. We will allocate a monthly $1,000 credit towards all your water bills. Water gives us all dignity. We're building a Jamaica for all Jamaica.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Small business represents the backbone of our economy, and many have been devastated by the pandemic. Our pledge is to increase funding for small businesses through grants and low-interest loans. New MSMEs will be offered an income tax break for their first 5 years of operation. Let's build a strong business sector for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Access to quality education is one of the guiding principles of the PNP. Our pledge is to ensure that all students and teachers have access to adequate technology infrastructure. The rapid infusion of technology into the teaching and learning process will ensure that no child gets left behind. Let's build an education system for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party. The following is a paid announcement by the People's National Party.
Jamaica is facing a pandemic of crime and violence. The PNP's pledge is to equip our security forces with modern technologies to increase our crime-fighting efforts. We will implement an efficient rehabilitation program for offenders. We'll also increase the number of social intervention projects in crime hotspots, with special emphasis on community policing. We are building a safer Jamaica for all Jamaicans.
The preceding was a paid announcement by the People's National Party.